Okay. What a build-up it is with these countdowns, Nico. Oh my God, it's like it's such a big build-up, and then boom, we come live, and you feel that you have to live up to this big build-up. But it's the story of our lives, I guess. Big build-up, big disappointment. No.
No,
Anyway,
no, no, no. It's
good
like
morning to you,
entering the
Nico.
pitch. It's entering the pitch. It's all good. It's all good. Just up to
Yes.
us to just keep things rolling. I'm looking forward to another funny session, especially with the audience, right? Interacting with the audience. And in the end, the both of us, we're always putting ourselves on the hot seat, right? And it's good
Yes.
that the audience actually challenges each and everything we're saying. And that's a good sign, right?
Absolutely, it is, Nico. And today I think we need to have a little bit more help than usual. I've had the unfortunate situation of waking up with a bit of a illness. I think it's been growing a little bit during the week, been lingering here, and last night it just fully fleshed on. So we might be a little bit slower here than usual. So we have to have a little bit patient today, but nonetheless, we're gonna get through it, and we're gonna have some fun anyway. So I'm happy to be here with you, Nico. And how has your week been in general?
Yeah, week has been good. Week has been good. So weather-wise, it's all good. Reading in between the lines has been good. Sports betting is recovering.
Yes.
Yeah, it's thrilling times. Although we always mention, like, yeah, we have so many great topics ahead of us. Thing is, and what's so great about our specific industry, topics tend to change nearly on a weekly basis, right? And this also challenges us. So at least me, right? No.
Yes.
So as soon as you just read a news, you can cite and quote this specific news like for ages. It's not
Yes.
happening for me, so I always have to read those things. But it's fun. How has your week been? Because you just flew in your team to Malta, so it's the first time the meet and greet team building. How has that been?
Yes, absolutely. I mean, the iGaming team is growing. Now we are 21 people here. We just got our new sales director, Charlie Tozer, on board. So she was number 21. So she is blackjack. In other words, she's the lucky number 21. Um, and yes, as a remote first organization that we have half of the team in Malta and half of the team in the UK. We are remote first, and remote first has its upsides and its downside. The good thing is that it's nice to be able to just put the head down and get the work done, which is I feel the best thing about this kind of remote first um, principle, where it's good to get through the to-do list. But on the other hand, what we lack sometimes is this kind of lunch conversations that takes place in a normal organization, where a lot of ideas spring to life in a kind of informal way. And that's why it's so important to gather the team from time to time as a remote first organization, just to spur on these conversations. And you realize when you are together how much of those conversations that you miss out, and how much you get done when you are together in person. So it's really important to have that opportunity as a remote first organization in order to gather the team. But at the same time, like I said, the remote first principle has its own advantages, and one of the key advantages again is that it's good as well to increase productivity and get a lot of work done on a day-to-day basis without being disturbed left, right, and center. So it's the combination of the two. If you can figure out that solution, that really hits the sweet spot, so to say. And so we've had a very productive week here this week. We're great for the team to be able to come and visit, but it's a little bit unfortunate here, because I'm keeping myself away from the team now in these couple of days here when I'm feeling a little bit under the weather. So
Mm-hmm.
I'm just kind of tapping in and zooming in and asking everyone how people are doing, and so on and so forth. But it's been a great week nonetheless. I guess something to start with today, Nico, I think, is the fact that this industry charity that has been promoted here in the last couple of weeks in aid of the vulnerable people in Ukraine has now managed to reach its target, which I guess is some sort of a silver lining to the whole crazy situation, whatever you want to call it at the moment. But the iGaming fundraiser, has now managed to collect more than £250,000 to the most vulnerable people in Ukraine. And I just think, we shouldn't necessarily celebrate, because obviously it's a pretty horrible situation with the war that is what is happening. But it's somewhat of a silver lining that the industry can come together, raise this amount of funds in order to improve the lives of the Ukrainians that are going through this very, very tragic war at the moment that doesn't seem to be getting better either. It's really hard to understand as a layman, as someone who is outside of the entire situation and the war in Ukraine. It's really hard to understand exactly what is actually happening, because we read our Western media and you get one perspective, and then you read the Russians' perspective, let's say, and you get a totally different picture of the situation, and so it's very difficult to actually discern what is happening. And I guess it's that expression that's the fog of war, where during the war itself, there's just so many different things that is happening at once that it's difficult to understand what is actually taking place. But from kind of following the news and trying to sift through the information that is coming across, it doesn't exactly seem to be getting any better. And so of course thoughts goes out to all the Ukrainians and all the millions of Ukrainians that have now fled the country as well. And my girlfriend Carolina here, she told me a story the other day where she works in the store. She works in a Nike store, and she met this elderly couple the other day who didn't speak that well English, who wanted to buy some clothes from her. And she made conversation with them, asked where the older woman was from, and she just said she's from Ukraine, and broke down in tears. She came to Malta without anything, without any clothes, without anything, and just kind of broke down in tears. And that's when it kind of hits. It becomes real all of a sudden when you're confronted with the individuals who have actually experienced this situation in the last couple of days and weeks. So, of course, all the thoughts and so on goes out to them, of course, Nico. I don't know if you have anything to add to that as well.
Yeah, so to just round things a little bit up, it's like it's not just important to talk about things; it's also important to actually take actions, like we all did. First of all, with the fundraiser, then offering help. A good friend of mine, they just welcomed a Ukrainian refugee family, and as you mentioned, right, as soon as you're literally confronted with a story which you can actually grab and hold on to, right, then it becomes reality, and then it becomes real. I just helped out last week, also here in Munich, with welcoming people from Ukraine, etc. And just a shout out to each and everybody. Not just talk about things, take actions. Take actions. It's you can never do something wrong, or like a former boss of mine, when I was doing an internship in Shanghai, he told me, okay, Nico, doing a good thing, the right thing is good. Doing the wrong thing is good. As it turns out, you just didn't do the good thing, but doing nothing at all is probably the worst thing you can do. And as said, so keep the fundraiser in mind. 250K ain't the end. Each and every little thing helps, and I'm pretty sure that the money will hit or will be used in the best possible cause as well.
Absolutely. And taking the tragedy aside, it's interesting as well to try to understand what is a possible exit here from this conflict. I don't want to segue too much out from what we have on the agenda here today, but we are human beings. Not only do we in the iGaming industry have the iGaming industry as the only thing that exists in the front of mind here, but like I said, it's interesting to think about what is the exit in this war. Russia obviously wants to have a couple of demands that are existential to Russia as they see it for the future survival of the Russian state, and that is of course Ukraine not being able to join NATO, also Ukraine becoming neutral, similar to Sweden. And then at the same time, Ukraine now, with obviously the Russian kind of invaders and occupiers within their country, they are being pulled more and more to the west, and obviously they have no interest potentially in staying neutral at this stage, when Russia has already proven, so to say, that they are not exactly a nation that the Ukrainians can trust, so to say. And so my point here is that it seems that the negotiation is sliding apart rather than coming together. And as a little final analogy here, it's really difficult for us Westerners and people in general in this world to think about war and to assume that things can get worse, because we have just never experienced something like this in our lifetimes. And similarly, when the pandemic started 2 years ago, which is almost 2 years on the day that the world locked down, and the world was supposed to lock down for 2 weeks. You know what I mean? Like, that was what we all thought. This was going to be 2 weeks, and we were going to get back to normal. And in fact, a lot of the events that were postponed to 2 years ago, they were postponed for just 2 months, because no one expected that the pandemic would still to this day wreak havoc, so to say. But now looking back, we can say that it was obvious that it was always going to happen. It's always easy to predict the past, right? It's very easy to predict the past, and it seems like it was the only possible outcome. But the reason why we thought that this was going to blow over in a couple of weeks is because that is just what we have in our peripheral. We couldn't see that a pandemic can go on for much longer than that, because we have never been disrupted as a society to that extent. And because we haven't been disrupted as a society, then we assume that we will never be disrupted as a society. And so my point here that I want to bring into kind of the Russian-Ukrainian war is that we should not take for granted that things are just going to solve itself, because conflicts have solved themselves before in our lifetime. We don't have to look too far back in history to look at conflicts that escalated beyond reason and beyond control. And in game theory, sometimes the logical thing is not always the most likely scenario. So the most logical thing here is obviously for both sides to stop fighting. But according to game theory, that is not always the most likely scenario, as both sides are kind of fighting for their own perspectives, let's say. So without going too far left here today, I just want to kind of bring that. It's something I'm thinking about a lot at the moment. It's just that we shouldn't take for granted that things are going to get better just because they've in our lifetime always gotten better through this type of situations. So again, the more we can raise awareness, the more we can talk about these issues and put pressure on politicians and whatever is needed in order to try to find a way out of this, obviously the better it is.
Exactly. So we just need, in the end, I'm pretty sure neither the Russian nor the Ukrainian side on themselves can solve this conflict anymore, right? Because it seems like they're stuck in something. First of all, Ukraine has been invaded, and it's of course it's the right of the Ukrainians to defend their country. And then, as you already mentioned, the easiest way would be like, okay, Russia going back, the Russian forces, but maybe they are stuck for the reasons you obviously mentioned. So fingers crossed that the diplomats will finally find the course and pave the way for both sides, that they can exit this worst case scenario without losing too much of their faces. Because if Putin now just reorders his troops going back, this I'm pretty sure this will never happen, as he will hold on to being one of the, or being one of the most powerful persons on earth. And as said, just fingers crossed that the diplomats from all over the world will find a way to actually solve this one, because there ain't no easy way out for this crisis.
Yeah. And as a final thing here, what Lasse Merzog, one of my best friends, he always taught me that in any negotiation, both parties need to feel like a winner. And sometimes to win a negotiation, you need to give someone an out. You need to give them a win. And the I guess the problem here in this situation is that there is no clear out for either of the two sides at the moment, where both sides can look as a winner, and that is what kind of prolongs the war here, prolongs the conflict. But in any case, Nico, I think let's leave the Ukrainians and the Russians aside here. We obviously will continue to follow here, but please, for those who are listening, there is the fundraiser, which had kind of reached its targets of the £250,000 here for the most vulnerable Ukrainians. The efforts doesn't stop here. We obviously want to continue to raise awareness for this fundraiser. So please consider, the link is here in the chat. Please consider to donate if you feel like that is something you would like to think. So anyway, good morning, Nico, and good morning to everyone who is listening here through our little rant here. We have some really interesting topics related to the iGaming industry now today, if you will. And just to summarize a little bit what we have ahead of us here. First of all, I thought it would be interesting to summarize a little bit the movements on the stock market within the iGaming industry in the last month. It's interesting because obviously this geopolitical massive event is currently taking place, and now we can start seeing a little bit how that has been affecting the markets here. I think that's just quite interesting to zoom in on a bit. Obviously, we had some very big news from within the iGaming industry as well, which related to Alwyn, that has now won the bid of the national lottery for the next 10 years. And there's a lot of controversy within this story, so we definitely will cover that as well. Obviously, we have a very interesting new market that is launching on the 4th of April, which is Ontario. We're going to talk about that. And finally, as well, the Swedish regulator, Spelinspektionen, has done some research into what effect did these temporary restrictions on Swedish players actually have on minimizing gambling harm. And interestingly enough, the regulator itself concluded that it was inconclusive if these restrictions had any effect whatsoever on protecting the players. And so we're going to talk about that as well, of course. But jumping into, Nico, if you don't mind here, we jump into the movements on the stock market here in the last month. I think this is very interesting. Who has the winners and losers been in the last month? And just a general kind of also oversight on how the movements on the stock market has been. So first of all, it's quite interesting because there is this ETF that is called BETZ, BETZ is the ticker, which is basically an ETF that is investing into various iGaming and sports betting related stocks on the public markets. And so as a starting point, I think it's interesting just to look at the overall trend of the iGaming industry in the last month, just looking at this ETF. And as we can see here from BETS, is that in the last month, they have lost 4.4% in market cap. So you could say, in other words, if you want to trust this ETF, that the industry at large have lost about 4.4% on the markets here in market cap, right? So that is kind of the baseline, you could say. But now if you look at the winners and losers of the industry in its entirety, we can see that Sportsradar has emerged as a big winner. They have managed to increase the share value by 23% in the last month, which is great, of course. We can see that the biggest loser, on the other hand, is Flutter and Gambling.com Group, which each have lost about 16% in share value in the last month. Another big movers is IGT that lost 13.4%. Better Collective lost 12.6%. Interestingly, that Better Collective lost 12.6% in the last months, while Catena Media, the biggest competitor, lost 4.3%. So Catena Media outperformed Better Collective. It's also interesting because according to the quarterly reports, if we read them from both Catena and Better Collective, is seemingly a much more positive numbers from Better Collective than Catena Media. But on the other hand, Better Collective is trading at a much higher PE ratio, so it's considered to be a much more speculative stock than what Catena Media is, and potentially that is why we've seen a bigger movement negatively on the Better Collective, considering that this big geopolitical event that the Ukrainian and Russian war that is taking place at the moment is obviously not favoring more speculative stocks, of course, here. Other interesting movements is I think we always Evolution is interesting to look at. Evolution has have big swings in the last month, but it's actually evened out with Evolution increase in the share value by about 1.6%. So it's pretty close to break even, but they have outperformed the industry. And that's important to look at. Again, bets this ETF is down 4.4%. So anything that is above 4.4% in the negative is you could say is like considering outperforming the industry. So Evolution definitely has outperformed. Another interesting stock, of course, to look at is DraftKings, the ever reoccurring topic of DraftKings, which is the speculative of the speculative shares of the industry. And interestingly, while DraftKings just a couple of days ago here was hitting an all-time low, or not an all-time low, but in the last couple of years low, they managed to actually increase the share value here in the last couple of days. I think in the last 2 days, I think DraftKings is up like 20%, but in the last month, they are up 7.6%, which is positive, of course. So these are just some of the interesting movements here. We see BetMGM down 4.4%. Lightning and Wonder, the old scientific games, is down 3.5%. Entain down 3%. Kinder down 3% as well. And then we have Betsson up 1.5% and so on. So while we have seen very big swings within this month, most of the shares within the iGaming industry have kind of evened out at the end of the day. At the same time, we've seen the S&P 500 have actually increased the market cap by about 1%. So the S&P have actually gone up during this instability, you could say, which is kind of surprising, I must say. While Apple, for example, is down 4.68% this month, and Bitcoin is at pretty much break even during the last month or so, which is also interesting. Bitcoin is really interesting to look at during these unstable events, because it seems like Bitcoin is more and more being treated as a store of wealth rather than a speculative asset. And that is always what the Bitcoin evangelists have wanted Bitcoin to become, the digital gold. That is what the Bitcoin evangelists are positioning Bitcoin as. And obviously this war in that triggered the sanctions against Russians, which obviously made the ruble collapse here more or less, have triggered a lot of Russians to do what they can to acquire cryptocurrency in order to be able to do commerce and to trade, as the Russian ruble and the Russian banks are becoming more and more difficult to interact with if you're a foreign entity. And so a lot of Russians have been securing stable coins and Bitcoin in order to be able to do business. And so it's quite interesting, and it feeds into the positive argument that Bitcoin is actually an asset that is positive during unstable events. And so while the debate is still up in the air, I would say that this is a very good sign for Bitcoin. We've seen obviously the rise of cryptocurrencies since the start of the pandemic, again, it's very easy to predict the past, but considering how much money was printed since the pandemic, it is no surprise that speculative assets and the likes of pretty much any asset have been massively been benefited through this time, and particularly Bitcoin and cryptocurrencies, where a lot of retail investors and the average Joe, when they got these stimulus checks, especially in the States, have been putting that into cryptocurrency. But what is actually interesting to see is when there is uncertain events, unstable events, what happens then to Bitcoin? And so far, so good for Bitcoin, of course. So it's quite interesting to follow here. What do you make of all of this, Nico?
One thing I have
a lot of information.
No. One thing I have to mention. So if you think so, all the people in the audience, you can't comment it. As of now, we're facing an issue with the LinkedIn stream. So I just reshared the post on my LinkedIn page. Please either use my LinkedIn stream or the YouTube the YouTube stream, and then we can actually see your comments. This has been just on my ear. Thanks again. Shout out to Nicolas for just mentioning this one. Getting back to the stocks. Cutting quite a long story short. With the interest rates being pretty much to zero, we are facing a big time issue in Germany, as the wealthiest companies in the country, which are listed in the German stock index, which is called the DAX, they are in big time debts with roughly 250 billion euros in debt. So as soon as the interest rates actually increase, it gets so it costs them even more to actually pay down or pay back these loans. And to give you an insight, one of the biggest telecommunication companies, Deutsche Telekom, they have a market cap of roughly 85 billion euros, but they are holding debts of 135 billion euros. So they are out debting their own market cap by at least 42-45%. So it's not just iGaming stocks problem, because interest rates will increase, especially as the Fed, the US central bank, already increased the interest rate. And it will be interesting to see how stocks will now react to money ain't free of charge anymore. Fingers crossed we didn't open up the box of Pandora back in the days in 2009 to actually fight the subprime crisis, or 2008 when it actually started and interest rates has gone literally to zero. As said, this is a big time issue we are facing in Germany, as too many companies are in way too much debt.
Yeah, exactly. And looking at the macro trends at the moment and zooming out even further, I think most economists right now are worried of what's to come. Essentially, we've enjoyed the influx of money here that we've seen through the COVID pandemic, but there are a lot of underlying bubbles, essentially, that is growing through this influx of capital that potentially is waiting to burst. There's several bubbles in many different areas, and the fear, like you're saying here, Nico, is once the interest rate starts going up again, the fear is that one or potentially multiple bubbles could burst and send the economy into a tailspin here. And at the same time, we're seeing obviously the inflation increasing more than expected still here. And question is again, if if you are able to stop the inflation to in the pace that it's taking place right now by incrementally increasing the interest rates here in the short term. I don't know, Nico. Like, what would be your expectation on a macro level here? Because it seems that the interest rates are going to be increased, but pretty. The expectation is that we won't see higher interest rates than like 1% or something like that. And is that enough, you think, to curb inflation? And what do you think in the long term here will happen on the markets with all the macro trends that is taking place at the moment?
Yeah, so I just this morning I just listened to a podcast of John Stiglitz. He's one of the greatest economists that we actually have, putting John Maynard Keynes and Joseph Alois Schumpeter aside, and he literally sees. So he ain't that much worried, but he still is worried if we will see the same movements like we already had back in the 70s. When salaries increased. Of course, prices went up as well. This caused inflation as well. But, probably the measures which had been taken in 2008 and 2009 with, printing money in that literally, yeah, there was money all over the place. Cutting a long story short, and someone has to pay the price. And if you just see how the stock exchanges split it apart from the real economy, because usually, a stock exchange price literally represents the future of a company, but it should never be split that far apart, as we actually see how things are going up, things are going down. Just take a look or take into account the DraftKings market cap going down from $27 billion to $6.5 billion without, in the end, they didn't change their vertical that much. But, facing a market cap which is roughly 1/3 of the former market cap is just crazy. And these are the indications we are actually seeing. And fingers crossed that in 10 years out of time, the literally worst crisis which the both of us have seen comes down to Corona and the Ukrainian war, and will not lead to all stock exchanges going into absolute madness, which can happen if one bubble just bursts. And this will be a result in an overspill effect, with further bubbles being bursting as well. But cutting a long story short, people in Frankfurt from the European Central Bank and guys and girls dealing with the Fed, they are paid way more than the both of us are paid. And just fingers crossed that they will find a solution which will work out for each and everybody. But one thing is for sure, that the overall economy just needs to change, and we just need an external shock to actually bring each and everything back to balance, because as of now it's not in balance.
Absolutely. And Nico, I don't know if you have any input here, but what assets and what investments do well in uncertain events, like if the interest rates would go up, if there would be instability on the stock markets and so on? Do you have any input there?
Yeah, so what you always see is like gold. The price for gold just increases. Then you have some other commodities where people actually tend to just literally park their money. And I'm pretty sure if you just take a look at the price for some of the commodities within the last 6 months, you will just see that they just increased at least more than 20%.
Yeah, absolutely true. But what is interesting to see in regards to gold is how will gold do if the interest rates goes up and inflation is curbed? Because it's not necessarily a win for gold. Let's say it's good for gold when a lot of money is being printed as well, obviously, because there's only a certain amount of gold, and and so on. But the question is, what happens if the interest rate goes up and inflation gets curbed? It's a little bit difficult to say, I think.
Yeah, the thing is, so in the end, ex ante, so looking
Yes.
to the future, it will be quite difficult, but ex post,
Yes.
it's always easy. I was like,
Yes.
yeah,
Easy to
these were
predict
the
the
two
past.
measures. We just stopped printing money, and then interest rates were going down again. So, as
Yes,
said,
exactly. Yeah.
we'll
But
see.
it's a good point. It's a good point. When the stock market doesn't do well, then generally gold does well. So to say. So commodities that actually have a use case and a long tradition to be a safe asset class, because you can't print gold, right? And that's the principle that makes gold a good asset class in uncertain time, when a government wants to print as much money as they can, which obviously devalues the currency, which makes gold more valuable in because more money has been printed, so to say. Once again, Henrico, we are totally sliding outside of the realm of iGaming. But again, it's interesting because these macro trends affect the iGaming industry as well. And I just want to finish off here, I guess, saying that in uncertain times, there is another asset class that does really well during a recession, and that is the iGaming industry. The iGaming industry has proven itself to be very resilient through the years. Not only is the iGaming industry recession-proof, if you will look at the 2008 crisis, the financial crisis, but also the iGaming industry is pandemic-proof. And so you have an industry that is quite unique in that regard, that is both pandemic-proof and recession-proof. Which makes the iGaming industry a quite interesting target for investors as well in uncertain times, because the gambling industry tend to do well when there is uncertainty in the world. So I would say that to add to gold, the second best option is the iGaming industry. Not to be too biased here.
Which is a good thing, because the both of us are in the iGaming industry.
That's it.
but
That's
putting this the macro trends a little bit aside, and good morning to my lovely friend Paul Marcantonio, which are always exchange like internals about Formula One and boxing. I always have to help him out because he literally has no clue about those two things. But I'm good. But touching down in the UK, we have something very interesting, a very interesting decision which has been made by the UK Gaming Commission, as they have named Alwyn as the new national lottery steward, beginning in February 2024. And this is very, very interesting because lotteries are the golden nugget of the iGaming industry, right? So license will be given out for 10 years. In the end, national lotteries actually work like a modern Robin Hood. So money is collected, and then this income is distributed. I wouldn't state it like to the poor, but the money is distributed to kind of foundations, etc., to help out homeless, whatever. So within the last 30 years of operations, Camelot, they gave away 45 billion pounds.
crazy money.
Yeah. As said, for the last 30 years, they spent this money, and the all-winning bid of Alwyn, they declared that they will give out within a time span of 10 years 43 billion pounds. So just 2 billion pounds less, like Camelot handed out within a time span of 30 years. Of course, you can recalculate the money within inflation, etc. But I'm pretty sure that the winning bid of Alwyn just outperformed Camelot. And there's a little bit of controversy. I would just take one of the topics and leave at least one further topic up to you, because what we see is, first of all, there had been 3 parties in the overall bidding process. For sure it's the Camelot, who had been running the national lottery since 1994. Then we identified Sisal, which is an Italian operator owned by Flutter, and of course it seems like the winning bid of Alwyn, which is run by a Czech billionaire. So as of now, it's just a decision which has been distributed, but the losing bids will not take this decision for granted. So I'm pretty sure we will just see this decision being challenged, and it might end in a legal game. And we're speaking about companies who have deep pockets. So it won't be an easy win. So fingers crossed that whoever will win will keep up with their word and, distribute the money to the poor.
Yes, I just wanted to mention here, maybe that 43 billion pound will equal 3 sandwiches in 10 years with the current inflation here. So good marketing ploy here, but by Alwyn. But jokes aside, just to reiterate here what you said, Nico, is that Camelot have distributed 45 billion pound in the last 30 years, and Alwyn, according to their bid, is going to distribute 43 billion pound in the next 10 years. So obviously they are far outspending Camelot in their new bid with this bid that they have put on the table. And so it becomes quite clear here why the Gambling Commission have chosen to break the agreement that they've had with Camelot since the very inception of the National Lottery here, since the 1994, essentially, where Camelot has been running these operations. At the same time, for Camelot, this is obviously a massive blow for their organization, and puts into question what is the future of that organization, losing such a huge revenue stream from one day to the other. And there was a report coming out here the other day, again adding to the controversy of this story. Basically, the UK's all-party betting and gambling group slammed Camelot for how they have been running the lottery in the last decade, saying that Camelot has taken advantage of the position of being the license holder in order to maximize profits for themselves and minimize the contribution to the state through these charity initiatives. And there were a couple of examples as well where the UK's all betting and UK's all-party betting and gambling group laid out a lot of the kind of marketing strategies which Camelot have been using here in order to, again, market this lottery as like life-changing events, and they are trying to build on the dream that the lottery can build. That has rubbed the politicians the wrong way, who wants to have more of a reasonable focus on the lottery and the advertising around the lottery, and they don't want this lottery to become yet another gambling operator, essentially. And so not only is it the Alwyn's seemingly much stronger bid for taking over the lottery that has led to the decision, but it also seems that it's the way Camelot have been running the operations in general, which has rubbed the politicians the wrong way, essentially. And so it's a quite interesting perspective here. And then there's yet another interesting twist in this saga, because it surfaced here a couple of days ago that Alwyn's founder, who is a billionaire, the name escapes me at the moment, but the founder of Alwyn has also ties with Gazprom, which is obviously a Russian oil and gas company, one of the biggest oil and gas company in the world. And any ties with Russia at the moment is seen as no. Let's say it's not the best to be associated with Russia right now, and so this is obviously something which Camelot is protesting, that that Alwyn should be disqualified from even being able to bid, considering the ties to Gazprom. Alwyn has responded to this, that the founder have taken the necessary steps to distance himself from Gazprom, and is not at all associated with this organization any longer. But I have a feeling that this is not the last time we hear about this, and we'll probably see more updates here as we go forward again, as obviously Camelot will do everything that they can in order to somehow try to secure this license for the next 10 years again.
And Caesar as well. Caesar as well with
as
the
well.
money of FanDuel. So the founder of Alwyn is his name is Karel Komarek, who's a Czech billionaire. And as said, so I'm pretty sure this will be leading to a legal game. So it ain't the last word being spoken yet.
No, that's absolutely for sure, Nico, and very interesting to follow here, of course. And also, you have to give a bit kudos to UKGC for being brave here and changing the license holder. It shouldn't be a given that the license holder should be given to the same license holder every term. Just like in politics, it's good to have a change from time to time, just to keep the rivaling parties on their toes, and also the party in power on their toes. It's good in the same perspective here as well, to keep the license holder and to keep the incumbents on their toes as well, so that you can maximize the efforts that goes to charity here. Again, 43 billion pound. That is not a small number to charity in the next 10 years, which is just very interesting to see. So interesting on that note as well, Nico. And I guess as the next topic here, while we are staying in Europe, I think what's also interesting when we are talking about kind of keeping the players' best interest at heart is the movements here within the Swedish regulatory side here as well. Here, Nico, what do you say? Shall we jump into that briefly as well? It's quite interesting, I think.
Go for it.
Yeah, so some of the viewers may know, but I will explain it from the foundation anyway. It's the fact that since the COVID pandemic started in Sweden, the regulator decided to implement these temporary restrictions on online gambling. There was a weekly deposit limit of about €500. And also a limit on the bonuses that was able to give to be distributed. That was minuscule, just I think something like 10-20 euro or something along those lines was enacted in order to protect the players from potential harmful gambling when everyone was locked inside during the pandemic and didn't have anything better to do, so to say. The politicians were scared that that this was going to lead to more an increase in harm from gambling. Now it's been assumed that was the case by the politicians, but of course the industry fought back here during the pandemic and said this is not at all the case. And what the regulator is just doing here is essentially pushing the players to the black market, where the players have even less protection from potential falling into addictive behaviors. And so the regulated operators were basically arguing that you are making us less competitive on the market, and the players will choose to go to unregulated options where the bonuses are much better, where there's no restrictions, and obviously where there's not any checks when it comes to responsible gaming. And now 2 years later, there's essentially been a report here. There has been research by the Swedish Gambling Authority to research here if these restrictions had any benefit to limit the potential harmful gambling. And the conclusion was essentially that it has failed to reach a clear conclusion on the impact of deposit and bonus limits for online casino that were implemented during the COVID-19 pandemic. So essentially, the regulator was tasked to evaluate the restrictions and came to the conclusion that they couldn't they couldn't come to the conclusion that these restrictions had any form of effect on limiting play from harmful gambling. And the general secretary of the Swedish licensed operator trade body BOS, Gustav Hofstedt, he has been very aggressive here and very vocal, where he spoke to iGaming the other day, to Jake Evans, our managing editor, and he said that there is a political temptation in every crisis to take action. Ideally, you want to take good measures as a politician, but in the absence of good measures, bad measures will suffice, as long as you can show that you are taking action. So Gustav is saying that as a politician, it's very important that you take action, even if the action is bad action during a crisis, because not taking any action at all can be interpreted as passivity, which is any politician's nightmare. No politicians want to be seen as being passive. Politicians should be more proactive, and so that's why, in Gustav's opinion, that these restrictions were basically a knee-jerk reaction to the pandemic, which in the end did not cause the players to be more safe, essentially. And he also goes on to say, by way of comparison, the Danish government, they refrained from special pandemic measures for the gambling market, and it probably had a better impact on the well-being of the Danes than what in Sweden appears to be meaningless measures that only created extra work in the compliance departments of gambling companies. So he has gone very aggressive here to say essentially that these temporary restrictions did not have any effect, essentially. What do you make of this, Nico?
Yeah, so first of all, it's always easy for a politician, to literally grab the low-hanging fruits with, coming up with tightening regulations is always a good thing. Thing is, it couldn't be measured. Yeah, cutting a long story short, in Sweden, they couldn't measure or link, problem-related gaming in a or declining in a positive way with tightening regulation. And this is pretty much, leaving Sweden and Denmark aside, which has been the findings of an empirical study of PwC, because they also released a report 2 weeks ago where they had been able to link tightening regulation leads to one thing, and this one thing is increase of black markets operations. Or to give you a little bit of an insight, Norway, the black market share is 66%. France, black market share 57%. Italy, market share 23%. Spain 20%. Denmark 9%. And they are seeing the same in Germany as well. And as you already mentioned, don't put eat in it to the audience. Don't put eat in every word we're saying on the silver plate. So black market operations, they are more focused on revenue than on safer gaming, safer gambling for their audience. I'm pretty sure we can leave it like this. So this is what PwC found out, that the tightening regulation just leads to an increase of black market operation, and the politicians should always keep in mind that they should save their voters from drifting into a black market operations. As said, coming up with a regulation is good, but think before you act. And even politicians shouldn't go for the low-hanging fruit with just looking for a headline like, okay, we need to restrict gaming, because in the end, for the player who is interested in the entertainment part of our great industry, They will just, use a VPN, sign up to a different page, and then they are in the unregulated market. And this should always be the greater goal for each and everybody of us, coming up with a good regulation, with a reliable regulation, where even the operators are happy to being regulated and to work in this regulated framework as well.
Absolutely, Nico, and that is the ever present balance that the regulator have to think about. Is the balance of letting the regulated operators stay competitive, so that the channelization rate remains as high as possible. Some regulators understand this better than others. You could argue that over the other side of the pond in the United States, that the regulator perhaps is even going a little bit too far with letting the locally regulated operators kind of do whatever they want. The Americans have not woken up to the importance of responsible gambling yet, and perhaps that is just a matter of time before it comes back to bite the regulator, so to say. But the fact still remains that the regulator have to strike that balance, keeping the player safe, and being the watchdog that comes up with reasonable principles in order to safeguard the players, but also understanding that if you make the regulated operators non-competitive, the players will just move to unregulated options where the outcome is a lot worse. And so I see that the time is ticking away from us here, like always, Nico. And we still have one more topic to cover. What is that?
Yeah, Ontario.
Yes.
Opening the market of Ontario, which will happen by Monday, the 4th of April. And what is so specific about the market in Ontario? First of all, it used to be a gray market. So even big European operators like Bet365, Unibet, 888, all are already active in this market. And now we also see the American operators like the FanDuel, like the DraftKings, like the BetMGM, like the Caesars, competing on that specific market. And if we just remember what has happened in New York, as soon as New York literally opened up, and none of the European players is actually active in New York as of now, it will be the first, sorry for the word, battleground where we see the European heavyweights standing toe to toe with the American operators as well. And as said, this will be the first time where an existing market, a gray market, where we see European operators being active in the past, will now become a white market with licenses being given out. And the Alcohol and Gaming Commission of Ontario, which actually gives out the license, they have been pretty restrictive with respect to whoever has no license will be banned from the market, and whoever has already a license is not able to operate until the 4th of April. So starting by the week of 4th of April, we will see how this kind of competition will turn out.
Exactly. So I guess that's the news of the week, essentially, is that the Ontario regulator have now asked the grey market operators to cease their operations until the market now regulates, essentially. And the regulator is seemingly kind of half aggressive in their actions here in order to make sure that as many operators as possible do regulate within the market here. So 4th of April is the date of launch, and I am very excited to follow up here to see how the market share will be divided in this market. As you are saying, the traditional European operators have had a head start in the market, building local knowledge, building their databases, and now they will be up against the very cash-rich and financially strong American operators, However, they are lacking the experience, expertise, know-how, systems and platforms, perhaps in order to compete with the European operators here. So I am very, very excited because the province of Ontario will be totally different when it comes to market share than the American states, as we've seen being dominated by the American operators. Now it will be a much more clear head-to-head here between the American and the European operators.
Fact.
Yes, fact. Hashtag. Another fact, Nico, is the fact that we are potentially going down to the beach for a little Negroni now. I think that's also a fact, don't you think?
Exactly. Yeah. In the end, we unfortunately ran a little bit out of time as we just, stayed a little bit. I wouldn't stay like too long on the stock exchange market topic, but it has been a great hour once again, talking to you and just discussing. But this just also indicates how diversified our industry actually is, right? It's not just one additional industry which is giving by us and each and everybody in being industry to society. It is just linked to the overall economy as well, and we shouldn't underestimate how the macroeconomic trends actually shift things from A to B. And it was fun once again, and thanks for giving us these insights, Pierre, as well. And I'm just literally happily looking forward to join you in a Negroni as well.
Absolutely, Nico. Thank you so much for this week. The weekly news wrap-ups, it's always a favorite of ours, both you and me, Nico. It's so nice to be able to do this together. It's a great motivator to stay up to date, to read the news, and to make the efforts to be able to deliver some insights here in this hours. And you know what, Nico? Let's skip this. Let's pour up the Negroni, head over to the beach, and we'll have a great weekend. So thank you so much, Nico, and thank you so much to the audience. We'll see you next week.
Bye. Have a great weekend. Bye-bye.